"Don't touch the baby." My daughter-in-law said it, clear and sharp, and my hands pulled back as if I had touched a hot stove. Before I go on, would you sit with me a moment? Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Thank you for keeping me company at my little kitchen table. I have a warm cup of tea here, and the porch light is on, the way I turn it on for family. I want to tell you something that has lived in my chest for a long time. It is a simple story, but it carries a heavy feeling. In that moment, I felt small. I felt shame, confusion, and love all at once, crowding my throat so I could not speak. I had washed my hands. I had used the sanitizer by their front door until my palms were tight and clean. The baby was wrapped in a soft blanket I had knit for months, slow and careful, one stitch after another in the quiet of winter evenings. She was sleeping, a little mouth opening and closing like she was tasting a dream. The room had afternoon light on the rug, yellow and kind. Still, the air between us felt cold. I remember the sound of the clock on the wall. I remember my son standing a little to the side, trying to smile with his eyes. I remember Tessa's face, tired, pale, beautiful, and worried. She was holding her child like a small bird. "Of course," I whispered, because it was the only safe thing to say. I kept my hands by my sides so I would not forget. I smiled, the way you smile when your heart has a bruise on it. I tried to be useful and quiet. But when I went home, the words walked in with me and sat down at my table. I turned on the kettle and watched it begin to hum. I thought about every visit, every rule, every promise I made to be gentle and not get in the way. I thought about love and how love can still hurt. I did not know then what those words were really holding. I did not know how fear can make a mother feel alone, even in a room full of family. I only knew that something between us had closed. I was on the other side of a door, listening. This is a story about family and boundaries. It is about a day at the pediatrician's office, where a gentle doctor read the file out loud and looked at my daughter-in-law with eyes that did not punish, but invited truth. It is about the quiet kind of healing that does not happen in a shout, but in a breath, a chair pulled closer, a pair of washed hands. If you have ever stood on the other side of a door you did not know how to open, I hope you will stay with me. I live a quiet life in a small house with a porch that faces a maple tree. I have been a widow for 7 years now. My husband, Tom, passed on a cool spring morning when the lilacs bloomed. The porch light became my way of saying, I am still here. Most mornings I wake before the sun. I make tea in the same brown kettle we bought the year Danny went to middle school. I stand at the sink, watch the sky turn pale, and let the house warm slowly. I like the hush at that hour. I worked in the school cafeteria for many years. Children knew me as Miss Grace. I handed out milk cartons and smiled at faces that changed from first grade to fifth. The smell of cinnamon rolls still comes to me when the oven warms. I did not have much, but I had enough. The house stayed tidy. The radio played old songs in the kitchen. I kept a small basket by the door for keys, coupons, and a note for groceries. Raising Danny was steady and sweet. He was a boy who asked quiet questions. He liked to line up his toy cars and tell me which one was fastest. He had a soft heart even then. Tom used to hum while washing the dishes. He did not sing words, just a low tune that made the evenings feel safe. After he passed, I found myself humming that same tune while I cleaned up alone. It helped me feel less empty. Danny grew tall in front of my eyes. He played soccer and came home with grass stains on his knees. He brought me library books and asked me to read the same ones again. He would sit on the floor and lean against my legs, and I would run my fingers through his hair. We had little jokes, just ours. He would call and say, "How's the thermostat today, Mom?" I would answer, "It's set to don't worry about me." He would laugh and tell me about his day. When Tom died, Danny stood very still at the hospital. He held my hand and did not let go for a long time. He drove me home and made me tea without asking where anything is. He stayed 2 nights on the couch to be sure I slept. That season was heavy. People came with casseroles and kind words. The house felt too big. Danny would rake the leaves and say, "We're okay," even when it did not feel true. In time, the days found a new shape. I went back to the cafeteria and tied my hairnet on with a steady hand. After work, I walked the aisles at the grocery store and put apples, flour, and cinnamon into my cart. I learned how to plan the week without planning around grief. When Danny told me he was seeing someone, I felt a small light inside me. He said her name was Tessa. He sounded calm and careful, like he wanted to protect something fragile and good. I nodded into the phone and smiled. We met at a little diner on a rainy Saturday. Tessa wore a blue sweater and kept tucking her hair behind her ear. She had a careful smile and bright eyes. She ordered chamomile tea. I liked the way Danny looked at her. It was soft, like he was looking at a sunrise. He pulled her chair out and listened when she spoke. I sat and watched the way their shoulders leaned toward each other. Tessa asked me questions about my garden. She told me she had a hard time keeping plants alive. I said, "Try a pothos. They don't mind a few mistakes." She wrote it down on her phone and laughed at herself. I told her a little about my work and the cinnamon roll mornings. She told me about her job at a small design office where she made flyers and logos. She liked lists and clean lines. She kept her pen in a neat case. It made me smile. Our beginnings were polite and simple. I brought a jar of peach jam the second time we met. She thanked me the way someone does when they mean it. She asked about the recipe. I watched Danny relax around her. He did not have to fill the whole silence. He let the quiet sit between them, and it was not scary. It felt natural, like a good song with spaces. Months passed, and one evening Danny came by with a face that could not keep a secret. He stood in the doorway with flowers from the corner shop. He said, "Mom, can we sit?" I knew before he told me. "We're having a baby," he said. His voice shook in the middle part of the sentence. Tessa's hand was in his and her eyes were shining. I covered my mouth and said, "Oh, thank God." I hugged them and felt the soft tremble in Tessa's shoulders. I kept my words simple. "I'm happy for you," I said. "I am here to help in any way you want." That night, after they left, I took out my knitting basket. I chose soft yarn in a pale yellow that reminded me of morning light. I started a blanket in small squares so I could carry it with me. Each stitch held a little of my hope. I also bought a pack of white onesies and washed them in gentle soap. I held the tiny cloth against my cheek. I put them back into the bag with tissue paper and a card. I wrote, "For the days that are long and sweet." I practiced how to be supportive without being in the way. I told myself, "Wait to be asked." I made a list of things I could do that would not intrude. It said, soup, groceries, laundry, quiet company. As Tessa's belly grew, she shared her hopes and her plans. She liked to keep things clean and calm. She had a feeding plan written in a notebook. She tracked her vitamins and naps with care. She asked that we not wear perfume around the baby. She wanted shoes off at the door. She did not want pictures posted online. She preferred a schedule for visits. I nodded and said, "Of course." I meant it. I remembered how new motherhood can feel like standing on a cliff and protecting something small from the wind. I wanted her to feel safe. Danny sent me texts with small updates, a picture of the crib, a note about a doctor visit, a message saying, "She felt a kick today." I would sit at my table and touch the screen with my fingertips. Sometimes I knit at night and counted my breaths with each stitch. I thought about tiny hands and tiny feet. I thought about Tom and how he would have hummed by the window and said, "We'll make room." I looked at the empty rocker and saw a future scene there. Near the end of the pregnancy, I got a text that said, "We're heading to the hospital." I stopped moving. I whispered a short prayer. I got up and changed the sheets in my guest room just in case. I did not go to the hospital. Danny had told me they wanted a calm space with just the two of them. I respected that. I kept my phone right beside me on the table. Hours were slow. I made tea and did not drink it. I stood by the window and watched the streetlight against the maple tree. I spoke to Tom in my head and said, "Watch over them." In the middle of the night, my phone lit up with a photo. It was the baby, red and new and wrapped tight. Her eyes were closed. Her mouth looked like a tiny heart. I sat down hard in my chair and cried into my hands. I said, "Thank you, God," over and over. I pressed my thumb gently to the screen and felt the uselessness of it, but I did it anyway. Love needs a place to go. Danny wrote, "She's here, everyone is okay." He told me her name and it sounded like summer. I wrote back, "I love you 3. I left the porch light on all night. They asked for a few days to rest before visitors. I kept busy. I washed the kitchen floor and cleaned the bathroom. I cooked a pot of chicken soup and put it in small containers. When it was time for our first visit, Danny texted me a list from Tessa. It was careful and clear. "Please wash hands when you arrive. No kisses on the face. Short visit. We're trying to keep a feeding schedule. No photos shared, please." I read it twice and felt the care in each line. I saw the effort to keep their world soft. I wrote back, "Yes to all. Thank you for telling me." I put hand sanitizer in my purse anyway. I wore a clean sweater and tied my hair back. I left my perfume on the dresser. I took off my shoes at their door and put them neatly to the side. I washed my hands for the length of a full song. I kept my voice low. I told Tessa she looked beautiful because she did, even in her tiredness. I told her, "You did something brave." She held the baby and nodded, eyes heavy but bright. I did not ask to hold the baby that first visit. I stood close and looked at her little face. I felt my heart swell and settle at the same time. I breathed in the warm smell of new life. I set the soup on the counter and labeled it with a date. I put muffins in the freezer. I wiped the sink without making a sound. I asked where the laundry basket was and folded the towels so the corners met. Danny wrapped his arm around Tessa's shoulders. He looked at me like he could not believe this was real. He said, "Thank you, Mom." I touched his cheek and said, "I am so proud of you." Back at home, I placed the baby's photo by the kettle. I did not post it anywhere. I did not show it to anyone unless they were sitting in my kitchen with me. That felt right and safe. I kept knitting. The blanket grew and took shape. I smoothed it over my lap and checked the edges. I thought about when it would touch little toes. Tessa sent some messages in the days after. They were simple, like, "We are tired, and she is feeding better today." I sent hearts and said, "I'm here if you need anything." I did not ask for more than she offered. I also looked up a few things on the library computer. I read about newborn care and how to make a home calm for a new mother. I wrote down notes about keeping visitors short and chores useful. I slipped the paper into my knitting basket. When they asked if I could come for an hour on a Tuesday afternoon, I said yes. I arrived a few minutes early and waited in my car until the time. I wanted to show that I could keep to their rhythm. It was a small gesture, but it felt important. Inside, the house was warm and a little messy, which is just fine with a newborn. There were burp cloths over the chair and a small mountain of clean laundry on the couch. Tessa smiled in a tired way and said, "Hi, Grace." I washed my hands before I said anything back. I held back from reaching out. I asked, "Can I put the soup in the fridge?" She nodded. I took care of tiny tasks and let the room breathe. The baby squeaked, a small sound that made my eyes wet. When the hour was up, I said, "I'll head out so you can rest." Tessa looked surprised. "Thank you," she said. Danny walked me to the door and squeezed my hand. I felt like I had done something right. On the way home, I whispered my promise out loud. "I will help without getting in the way." Saying it made it stronger. It was a promise to them and to myself. I kept that promise close in those early weeks. I did not come by without asking. I sent messages like, "Do you need groceries? And I can take the trash out if you want." Sometimes the answer was yes, and sometimes it was no. The baby's name, when I said it out loud at home, softened the sound of the rooms. I practiced saying "grandmother" to myself and smiled. I moved the rocker near the window so when she visited, we could sit there and sway. I folded the knit blanket and placed it over the back of the chair. Tessa sent another list before a Sunday visit. It had reminders like the first one. She added, "No strong smells, please. We're using fragrance-free everything." I checked my soap and put away my scented lotion. I asked if I could bring a small plant for their windowsill. Tessa said, "Maybe later." I said, "Of course." I brought a loaf of bread instead. When I arrived that day, Danny was in the kitchen making coffee and trying to look like he knew how. He said, "The machine and I are learning each other." I smiled and said, "Be gentle. She just wants a steady hand." We stood and watched the baby sleep in her bassinet. Tessa came out of the bedroom with her hair in a loose braid. She looked at the bassinet the way a sailor checks the sky. I could see both love and fear in her gaze. We took turns telling small stories. I told one about Danny's first bath at home and how he screamed like a little goat. Tessa laughed and then looked at her baby to be sure the laugh did not wake her. Danny shook his head and said, "I still hate baths." When I left, I shut the door soft. In the car, I let myself cry again, but it was a good kind of crying. The kind that comes when a new thread is woven into an old cloth. I felt thankful and careful at the same time. In those days, my life moved between my quiet kitchen and their new world. I went to the store and bought the scent-free detergent they used, so my clothes would match their air. I put a small bottle of hand sanitizer by my front door to remind me. I practiced not touching my face, which is a hard habit to break. Sometimes I would sit with my friend Loretta on her porch and say, "I want to be helpful. I do not want to cross any lines." She would nod and say, "You're doing fine." She has 3 grandchildren and a wise way of listening. The baby's first pediatrician appointment was on a Thursday. Danny mentioned it on the phone. I said, "Do you want me to drive? Car seats are fussy." He said they would let me know. Those early weeks were careful, and I understood why. New life is delicate. New parents are tender. I wanted to be a soft place around them, not a weight. Every night, I turned on my porch light. It was my little signal to the world that love lives here and is ready to step in when asked. I looked at the knit blanket on the rocker and pictured small hands tugging the edges. I went to bed with a peaceful heart and my promise still warm on my tongue. The first small tension came quietly, the way a thin crack slips across ice. I had a visit on the calendar for a Wednesday afternoon. I had soup in containers, a bag of soft rolls, and the knit blanket folded over my arm. 10 minutes before I was going to leave, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Tessa. "We need to cancel today. She didn't sleep last night. We are keeping the schedule tight. New rules for visits, please. Short visits only, no strong smells, wash hands before touching anything, no kisses, no photos, no outside clothes on the couch." I stood in my kitchen and read the words twice. I pictured Tessa with a tired baby and a paper list, trying to keep the world from waking the small one up. I wrote back, "Of course, rest. I will check in next week." I set the soup in the freezer and pressed the lid down until it clicked. The house felt very quiet after that. I could hear the clock on the wall and the sound of a car going by outside. I smoothed the knit blanket with my palm. I told myself, "It's just one day." I told myself that love sometimes means waiting. A few days later, I brought the knit blanket with me when they invited me again. It had grown larger since the first time. I had edged it with a white border. The yarn was soft, and I had washed it in fragrance-free soap, the kind they used for the baby's clothes. I folded it with care and tied it with a simple cotton ribbon. Tessa looked at it and touched the edge with her fingertips. She said, "It's beautiful, Grace." Then her face tightened a little. She rubbed the yarn between her finger and thumb. "I'm a little worried about fibers and lint," she said. "I read that some yarns can shed. I don't want her breathing in anything. Maybe we should wait." My heart pinched in my chest, small and quick. I nodded. I said, "I can wash it again, or I can keep it at my house until she's older." Tessa glanced at the baby and then back at me. "Maybe keep it for later," she said, "until we're sure." "Of course," I said, and I meant it. My fingers felt cold, even though the room was warm. I slid the blanket back into my tote and kept my smile soft. I told myself, "It's only a blanket. We will laugh about this one day." At the door, there was a small bottle of hand sanitizer. It had a little sign taped to it that said, "Please use." I pressed the pump once and a big dollop fell into my palm. I rubbed my hands, and it made a little squeak sound between my fingers. I tried to lighten the mood and said, "If I use any more, I might slide right through the floor." Tessa did not smile. She watched my hands like a nurse. "Can you do it again?" she asked. Make sure to get the backs of your hands and your thumbs, the wrists too, 20 seconds. I felt my cheeks warm. Yes, I said. I pressed the pump again, this time less. I rubbed slowly and counted in my head. I rubbed the backs of my hands and my thumbs the way she asked. When I finished, I held my hands up for a second, fingers spread, like I had seen doctors do on TV. Thank you, Tessa said. Her voice was flat with tiredness. I nodded, trying to make my face calm. Inside, I felt a small sting. It was not a deep cut, but I felt it all the same. We sat in the living room. The baby slept with her mouth open a little. Danny poured us tea and asked, "How's the cafeteria these days, Mom?" I told him a small story about a boy who insisted his milk carton was secretly chocolate. It made him laugh. Before I left, I reached into my purse. I pulled out a small printed photo of the baby. It was the first picture they sent me from the hospital. I had printed it at the pharmacy and slipped it into my wallet to keep by my heart. "I made one to carry," I said. "I like to look at her when I'm missing you." Tessa's shoulders went a little higher. "We're not sharing photos yet," she said. "Even printed ones. We don't want any images out there. We decided on that." I felt that sting again. It lingered. "Of course," I said. I slid the photo back into my wallet. "I won't show anyone," I added, even though I had only wanted to look at it by myself. Tessa nodded and looked at the baby. The room was so quiet I could hear the radiator click. On the way to the door, I spoke softly. "I'm trying to do it right," I said. The words fell out of me before I could stop them. They felt honest and small, like a bird in my hands. Tessa rubbed her forehead and sighed. "We have to be careful," she replied. Her voice was not unkind. It was just tired and thin with fear. Danny stood beside her and put his hand on her back. He walked me down the hall. "It's just a phase, Mom," he whispered, trying to make it light. He forced a grin that touched only one side of his mouth. "We're all learning." "I know," I said. I touched his arm and tried to send him courage through my fingers. I told myself to move with this river and not fight it. The first time I heard, "Don't touch the baby," I was in their living room 3 weeks later. The afternoon light was soft. A little lullaby was playing from a phone on the shelf. The baby was in a bassinet, half awake, making baby sounds like little bubbles. I stood close and tucked the corner of the swaddle near her feet because it looked loose. My finger rested for a second on the blanket by her tiny toes. I felt warmth there and a burst of love. Before I could pull my hand back, Tessa's voice came, quick and hard. "Please don't touch the baby," she said. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp. The words cut the air. Danny looked up from the kitchen and froze. I snapped my hands behind my back, palms pressed to the fabric of my cardigan. "Of course," I whispered. The words felt papery. I kept my face still so it would not break. I stood there for one more breath and then took one slow step away. No one spoke for a moment. I heard the hum of the fridge. I heard the baby breathe out and in, small and steady. I felt my heart move up into my throat. I walked to the sink and washed the mugs we had used for tea. The water was warm and the soap smelled like nothing, because it was the kind without scent. I wiped the rim of each cup with my thumb. From the next room, I could hear the baby's soft breaths and the rustle of the bassinet sheets. While I washed, I talked to myself in my head. "It is cold season," I said. "Germs are everywhere. She is a new mother and she is scared. She wants to do everything right." The words were true. They helped. But even true words do not take all the sting away. I carried the dried mugs to the cabinet and lined them up in a neat row. My hands shook a little. I took 2 deep breaths and hummed the tune Tom used to hum. It helped me to find the floor again. When I got home, I went to Loretta's porch. She sat on the swing with a blanket over her knees, the gray one she keeps there always. I told her the story in simple pieces. I told her about the hand sanitizer, the blanket, the photo, and the sentence, "Please don't touch the baby." Loretta listened without telling me what to feel. She rocked the swing a little. "Kindness and patience," she said after a while. "Be the steady one. She's drowning in newness." "I worry I did something wrong," I said. "Maybe I smell like my house. Maybe my sweater has lint. Maybe I embarrassed her." The words fell out in a long breath. I keep thinking about the day my own mother-in-law came over when Danny was born. She told me I was holding him wrong. I felt small for days. Loretta nodded. You remember that hurt because it marked you, she said. You can choose not to mark her. She squeezed my hand. Keep doing what you're doing. Ask what they need. Do the quiet tasks and breathe. I took her words home and put them on the shelf in my heart. I made them a promise again. I would help, and I would not stand in the way. I would be soft around the edges of their new life. More rules were named, and I honored each one. Shoes off at the door, no kisses on the face. Only Mom and Dad should hold the baby, Tessa wrote in one message. I read the words and closed my eyes for a second. I told myself that holding is not the only way to love. I brought groceries and set them down by the kitchen island. I washed my hands, counted to 20, and dried them with a paper towel because cloth makes Tessa nervous. I folded clean laundry at the end of the couch and stacked it in neat piles. When the baby fussed, I did not move toward her. I let Danny and Tessa do their dance. The house smelled like warm milk and laundry soap. There were burp cloths on the arm of the chair and tiny socks under the couch. Life had exploded out of its tidy shape, the way it does with a new baby. Tessa stood with her body slightly turned, always ready to reach toward the bassinet. Danny learned how to sway in place without thinking. On the phone one evening, I asked Danny if they needed anything from the pharmacy. He said they were low on vitamin D drops. I said I would bring them by the next day and leave them in a bag on the porch. He cleared his throat. Could you maybe drive us to the pediatrician on Thursday? He asked. The car seat base is being fussy and I don't want to mess it up. Of course, I said. I can be there at 9. I felt a warm spot in my chest. Helping with a car seat felt like a simple job. It felt like a way to be useful without stepping on any toes. Later that night, I got a message from Tessa. We'll let you know about Thursday, she wrote. I'm not sure about extra people in the car with the baby yet. I replied, whatever is comfortable, I can follow in my car too. She wrote back, we'll see. On Wednesday, Tessa sent another message. Okay, she wrote. You can drive. Please sit in the front seat only. No touching the baby in the car. Hand sanitizer at the door and before we leave. I smiled at the screen. Yes to all, I wrote back. The morning of the appointment, I arrived a little early and waited in my car. The maple tree in front of their apartment was losing its leaves in small handfuls. The sun came through the branches and made a lace pattern on the sidewalk. I breathed in and out. Inside, the living room looked like it always did now, full of tiny signs of new life. The diaper caddy sat open on the coffee table. A clean onesie hung over the back of a chair like a flag of surrender. The bassinet was by the window, where the light was gentle. Tessa was dressed in a soft gray sweater. Her hair was braided, loose, and practical. She moved carefully like everything could break. Danny held the car seat and frowned at the straps. He looked up at me. Morning, Mom, he said. Thanks for being here. Happy to help, I answered. I washed my hands at the sink and dried them with a paper towel. I used the sanitizer at the door anyway, because that was the routine now. The smell made the air feel a little sharp. I stood near the bassinet and looked at the baby. She had her tiny feet sticking out from the blanket. The toes were the size of beans. Without thinking, I leaned down and adjusted the corner near her feet so it would not rub. My fingers brushed the knit of the swaddle for a breath. Tessa turned. Her eyes went straight to my hand. Her voice came out tight. Please don't touch the baby, we can't risk it. I froze. My hand recoiled as if the blanket was hot. I stepped back and held both hands behind me, tucked against my lower back like I had practiced. Of course, I said, and my voice sounded thin to my own ears. The room went still. Even Danny seemed to stop breathing for a heartbeat. He looked from Tessa to me and then down at the car seat. The baby continued to sleep, unaware of the storm we were having in silence. We're leaving in 10 minutes, Tessa said. She spoke to the air. We need to keep on schedule. Her eyes were glassy with tiredness and something like fear. She busied herself with the diaper bag, checking and rechecking the contents, wipes, extra clothes, a blanket with no loose fibers. I stood very still. I felt something heavy rest on my chest, like a hand pressing down. It was not anger. It was more like a soft sadness that knew it had to find a place to sit. I kept my face calm and my hands still. I told myself to endure this moment without making it bigger. In my head, a question whispered over and over. Is something wrong? It slipped between the other thoughts and sat in the center. Is there something we have not been told? Is there a health condition, a reason for strict isolation? Had I missed something in the haze of lists and rules? On the drive to the clinic, I kept my eyes on the road. I followed the speed limit like it was a prayer. Tessa sat in the back with the baby. Danny sat up front with me, glancing in the mirror every few seconds. The car was quiet except for the little squeaks the car seat made when the road turned. "Thanks for driving," Danny said after a while. He was trying to make a bridge with words. "We appreciate it." "You're welcome," I said. I meant it. My voice wanted to tremble, but I didn't let it. I kept my hands at 10 and 2 and tried to breathe like I used to when I had to do something hard, like giving a speech at a school staff meeting. From the back, Tessa spoke. "I packed the extra swaddle with the tight weave," she said. "The one with no fuzz." Her words were for Danny, but they reached me too. I nodded even though she could not see it. We reached the clinic and I parked close to the door. I got out to open the door for them, but Tessa was already climbing out, moving with quick steps. She carried the car seat like a sacred thing. Danny carried the bag. I walked a few steps behind and held the clinic door open. The lobby smelled like clean floors and soap. We checked in, and they called the baby's name. Tessa filled out a form with careful handwriting. She wiped the pen with a wipe she had brought from home. I sat in a chair near the fish tank and watched the fish move without sound. The light from the tank made the room glow blue. A little boy coughed somewhere behind us. Tessa stiffened in her chair. She pulled the car seat cover down until it was snug. "We have to be careful," she whispered to Danny. He nodded and touched her knee. I looked down at my hands. The skin on my knuckles was dry from all the washing and sanitizer. A little red patch had formed between my thumb and first finger. I rubbed it gently with the side of my finger. I told myself I would buy some plain lotion on the way home. They called us back. I say us because my body moved with theirs, even though I tried to be small. We followed the nurse down a hallway with posters on the walls about vaccines and tiny toothbrushes. The room we entered had a cheerful mural of an elephant and a giraffe. The exam table looked too big for such a small person. Nurse Carla weighed the baby and made kind sounds. Tessa moved close as if she could catch her if the scale decided to be tricky. Danny asked a careful question about ounces. The nurse smiled and wrote numbers down. She was about to say something else when the baby made a small sound. It was not a cry, just a little sigh that bobbies make when they are waking. I watched the corners of Tessa's mouth pull tight. She reached for the car seat strap. I took one step forward and then stopped myself. I folded my hands, one over the other, and pressed my fingers into my palm. My body wanted to help, to tuck a blanket, to do something. But my promise sat firm in my chest. Help without getting in the way. The nurse left to get the doctor. The room felt like it had shrunk. Tessa stood by the exam table, one hand on the car seat handle, the other twisting the end of her braid. Danny leaned against the counter and stared at a poster about hand washing. I stood by the door and looked at a tiny paper gown folded in a drawer. My mind kept circling back to the same question. Is she sick in some hidden way? Is there a note in the chart that says no touching? I remembered Tessa's sentence, "We can't risk it." The words sat heavy. I thought about immune systems and things I did not know the names for. I felt a thread of fear wind around my ribs. Days before this appointment, the small tensions had kept coming in soft waves. One afternoon, I had come by with a new pack of burp cloths. I had washed them in the same scent-free soap and ironed them flat because I thought it would help them stack better. Tessa thanked me, then set them aside and used the ones she already had. I told myself, it's okay, she has her own rhythm. Another day, I arrived wearing a cardigan with tiny mother-of-pearl buttons that had been Tom's favorite on me. Tessa asked if I could change into a clean sweater. "That one looks like it might shed," she said. I wore a long-sleeved t-shirt I kept in my bag for just such a moment. I smiled as I changed in the bathroom and spoke to Tom in my head. "It's all right," I told him. "She wants to protect her girl." At home, I placed the knit blanket back in the closet. I stood there for a minute with my fingers on the fabric. I could still see my hopes tied to the stitches. I said out loud, "Later." The word felt both kind and hard. I used to tuck the printed baby photo at the edge of my kitchen mirror so I could see her when I made tea. After Tessa spoke about no prints, I slipped it back into my wallet and did not take it out again. Sometimes I would slide my fingers over the leather as if I could feel her through it. Love reaches for whatever it can find. One evening, Danny called on his way home from the grocery store. He said, "Mom, how are you?" I told him I was fine and asked if he needed anything. He paused. "I know this is hard," he said. "She's scared. I'm trying to help her." His voice broke a little on the last word. "I know," I said. "I am on your side. I am on her side too." He sighed, and I could hear him try to gather himself. "It's just a phase, Mom," he said again. "We'll be okay." I hung up and sat on my porch. The evening air felt like cool water. I watched a neighbor's cat walk the length of the fence. I remembered my own mother-in-law and the way her words could cut if she wanted them to. "You shouldn't hold him so much," she had said when Danny was small. "You'll spoil him." I had cried in the bathroom with the shower running so no one would hear. I promised myself again that I would not cut anyone with my tongue, no matter how sharp my hurt felt. I would be the one who folded towels and poured tea and kept the air calm. I would wait. I would trust that love could find a path through this tight forest. Back in their living room, the day of the appointment, I watched Tessa check the diaper bag one more time. "Wipes," she whispered. "Diapers, extra onesie, extra swaddle, pacifier." She moved items in and out of the bag, reassuring herself with the doing. Danny reached to squeeze her shoulder. She flinched and then leaned into him. "I'll warm up the car," I said. I needed a small job to do. I stepped outside and let the cool air touch my face. I closed my eyes for a moment and said a small prayer. "Help me be patient. Help me be kind. Help me not make this about me." When I came back inside, the baby let out a small cry. It was thin and immediate, and then it stopped. Tessa's face went white, then pink. She lifted the car seat a little as if to rock it. Her hands were steady, but I could see the tremor in her lips. "I'm sorry," Tessa said out of nowhere. She spoke to the air. I know I have a lot of rules. I am just trying to." She didn't finish the sentence. It hung there, and we all wanted to fill it. Danny spoke first. "We're doing our best," he said. He looked at me and tried to send me something like an apology with his eyes. I nodded. I did not need him to say the words out loud. I could hear them anyway. "We're ready," Tessa said then, and we moved toward the door like a small train. I carried the keys. Danny carried the bag. Tessa carried the baby and her fear. I held the door open and tucked my feelings into my pocket. In the car, I adjusted the mirror so I could see the road better, not to see the baby. I wanted to respect the boundary. My hands felt steady on the wheel. The world outside looked normal. People walked dogs. Leaves gathered in gutters. A man raked his lawn. Inside the car, everything felt tight and holy. We reached the clinic parking lot and I turned off the engine. I took one breath in and one out. "We're here," I said. It felt like an arrival and not just a destination. The small tension that had been building in the weeks before pressed against the edges of the day. In that small corner of time, I did not know a gentle truth was waiting for us beyond the exam room door. I only knew that each rule had cut a thin line in me. No kisses, no holding, no touching. I told myself that my hands could still be useful even if they could not be warm. I could turn doorknobs and carry bags and hold space. I also knew this. My love was not fragile. It could sit in a chair and be quiet. It could wash dishes while the baby breathed in the next room. It could be a porch light left on every night. And still, it hurt to be on the other side of a glass you cannot see. As we walked toward the clinic doors, I glanced at Tessa's face. It was beautiful in a way that comes from being poured out. Her eyes were the eyes of a mother who had not slept. Her mouth was set in a line she did not mean to draw. I did not see a person who wanted to hurt me. I saw a person standing guard on a cliff edge. I held the door for them once more and followed close behind. I did not know the end of the sentence yet. I did not know that the doctor would read the file and look at Tessa in a way that would help us all breathe again. I only knew that I would keep walking beside them, one slow step at a time. In the waiting room, the light was soft the way morning is soft. A fish tank glowed on the far wall, and the fish moved like small ribbons. Somewhere in the back, a monitor beeped quietly, steady and calm. The chairs were blue and low. A wooden bead maze sat on a little table with a few missing beads. We sat close together but felt far apart. Tessa kept the car seat covered with a thin, breathable cloth. Her hands were on the handle, tight and steady. Danny sat with his knee bouncing, then catching himself, then bouncing again. I folded my hands in my lap and watched the fish. A nurse opened the door and called the baby's name with a smile. Carla, her badge said. She wore a cheerful pin, a tiny son with a face. Come on back, she said. Her voice felt like warm water. We stood, a slow rise. Tessa lifted the car seat with care. Her face looked fine from far away, but up close I could see the pink at the corners of her eyes. Danny picked up the diaper bag and the clipboard. I walked behind them and held the door as they passed. The nurse noticed the way we moved and slowed her steps to match. The hallway had posters about washing hands and little pictures of happy teeth. A baby cried somewhere. A door closed gently, like a breath. I could hear the soft beep again, the heartbeat of the place. Room 3, Nurse Carla said. The room was painted with a giraffe and an elephant. The exam table had white paper pulled over it. A little scale stood to the side with a round dial that looked like a clock. The sink had 2 pumps for soap and sanitizer. Everything looked clean, calm, and ready. Tessa set the car seat on a chair. She pulled a wipe from a packet and cleaned the counter in small, careful strokes. She wiped the chair arm where her sleeve might rest. She wiped the handle of the cabinet. I watched her hands do the cleaning and wondered what her mind was trying to clean. Can I get your weight today, sweetheart? Nurse Carla said to the baby in a sing-song voice. She looked at Tessa. We'll only take a minute. Tessa nodded and lifted the baby out of the car seat with a softness that made my throat tighten. She placed her on the scale as if the metal might be too cold for new skin. The numbers moved and then settled. Right on track, the nurse said. She smiled with her whole face. And length next. She measured with the thin paper tape and made a note. As she finished, I took one small step closer to see the baby's face better. I did not reach a hand. I did not touch the blanket. I only leaned in to let my eyes hold her for a moment. Please don't touch the baby, Tessa said, quick and firm. She spoke gently, but the edge was there. Her voice rang in the small room. My steps stopped in the air, then came back to my body. I put my hands together and tucked them against me. Nurse Carla paused. She looked up with a nurse's careful eyes, taking in the room, taking in the tone. She did not say anything. She just let her face be kind. Then she moved the scale back to the corner and wiped it down. Dr. Patel will be right in. She said, She's wonderful. She gave us all a little nod and left the door half open for a second, the way nurses do, then closed it gently. Tessa stood by the sink and pumped sanitizer into her hands. She rubbed and rubbed as she stared at the exam table. Danny folded and unfolded the edge of the paper. I stood by the door with my hands folded in front of me, fingers tucked under my palms. My heart felt like a small bird holding still. The door opened and a woman with kind eyes came in. Dr. Patel. She wore the white coat like it was just a sweater. She had a stethoscope around her neck and a calm way of standing. She smiled. Good morning, she said. I'm Dr. Patel. How are we all doing today? No one answered for a breath. Then Danny said, We're okay. The word sounded too big and too small at the same time. Tessa's mouth made a line. I nodded politely because that is what you do. Dr. Patel washed her hands and dried them slowly. She spoke to the baby in a soft voice, the way people who love their work do. Let's see you, she whispered. She listened to the baby's chest. She looked at her eyes and her mouth. She pressed tiny legs gently and smiled when they kicked back. Strong, she said. Alert. She checked the fontanelle with 2 fingers and nodded. She watched the baby's color as she breathed. She wrote a number and then another. Her stethoscope moved like a promise. She said, She is healthy. Her weight is right where I like to see it. Her reflexes are good. You are doing a very good job. I felt the room exhale a little. Danny's shoulders lowered. Tessa did not move. Her hand was on the car seat handle now, even though the baby was in her arms. Then Tessa spoke. "No one is supposed to touch the baby," she said. "Doctor's orders." Her voice was tight. She looked at Dr. Patel with eyes that wanted the world to match her fear. "We were told to keep her isolated." Dr. Patel's forehead smoothed, then made a small line. It was not a frown. It was more like a question on a face. "Let me take a look," she said. "I'll review your previous visit notes and the summary." She turned to the computer and clicked with a slow, steady rhythm. She asked, "Who was your hospital pediatrician?" And Tessa told her. Dr. Patel opened the chart and scrolled. She read in a low voice, speaking as if to the room. "Full-term birth," she said. "No NICU stay, no complications noted at discharge, newborn screening normal." She scrolled again. "No known immunodeficiency, vaccines on schedule, standard newborn care recommended." She paused and looked at Tessa gently. She clicked another tab. "After visit summary from your last appointment," she read. Her voice stayed calm. "Wash hands before holding. Keep sick contacts away. Avoid crowded places in the first few weeks. Caregivers may hold infant with clean hands. No special isolation required." The room was quiet. The beep from the hallway touched the silence and then let it go. Dr. Patel turned her head back to Tessa. She did not speak. She gave a small, steady look. It was not a glare. It was not hard. It was a pause, a mirror, a place for the truth to walk into. Dr. Patel scrolled once more and spoke very softly. "I'm also seeing a note here," she said. She kept her eyes kind. "Screen positive for postpartum anxiety at 2-week check. Next steps recommended." She looked up. "Encourage support network, including family." Tessa's hand tightened on the car seat handle. The skin across her knuckles went white. She looked down at the baby and then up at the ceiling, like she was trying to hold back water. Dr. Patel kept her voice soft and even. "You are doing your best," she said. "You are carrying a lot of love, and you are carrying a lot of fear. Let's talk about that." The words opened something in the room. Tessa took a small breath that sounded like it hurt. Then the tears came. They were not loud. They were quiet and heavy, one after another, like beads falling into a bowl. "I'm scared all the time," she said. Her voice trembled. "I see danger everywhere. I can't sleep unless I'm watching her breathe. I check her chest to make sure it goes up and down. I tell people not to touch because I feel like something terrible will happen if they do." Danny moved closer without making a big sound. He held out his hand. Tessa took it and held tight. The baby made a soft noise, and Tessa rocked her gently with that new mother sway. Dr. Patel pulled a tissue box from the counter and set it within reach. She waited with the same steady eyes. I know it might sound silly," Tessa said through tears. "But my head keeps shouting at me. It says she's so small. It says germs are everywhere. It says if I don't control everything, I will fail her. I don't know how to turn it off." I stood very still. I felt something inside me unclench. It wasn't about me being careless or dirty. It wasn't about my sweater or the way I washed my hands. It was fear. It was a mother's wild love turning over itself, trying to make a safe nest by making the world smaller. Dr. Patel nodded slowly. "It does not sound silly," she said. "It sounds like postpartum anxiety. It is common. It is treatable. It is not your fault." She spoke with kindness that did not bend, the kind that holds you up. Tessa looked at her with wet eyes. "I feel crazy," she whispered. "I don't want to be like this. I want to be happy. I want to enjoy her." She looked down at the baby and touched her cheek with one finger. "I love her so much it hurts." "I know," Dr. Patel said. "Fear can look like control. It can look like rules. It can feel like you are protecting her, but really you are trying to quiet the alarm inside you." She sat on a little stool and kept her voice even. "Your brain is on high alert. It is trying to keep you both safe. It is working too hard." She reached for a pamphlet and then changed her mind and spoke without it. "Here is what I recommend," she said, and she looked at all three of us. "Clean hands always. No kissing the baby's face. Watch her cues. Keep sick people away. But ordinary visits with trusted family are okay. Holding her with clean hands is okay." Tessa's shoulders lifted and fell. She breathed out in a shiver. Dr. Patel continued. I'm going to give you referrals for a therapist who knows postpartum care. There is also a support group that meets down the hall on Tuesdays. I want to see you again in 2 weeks to check in. Nurse Carla will call you in 3 days to ask how you're doing. Tessa nodded. The tissue in her hand was damp. Danny squeezed her fingers and said, I'm here, we're in this together. His voice was low. He meant every word. He looked like someone who had been waiting to be told what to do. Dr. Patel looked at me. Grandma, she said, how are you doing over there? Her voice invited me to step into the circle. I swallowed and found my voice. I want to help, I said. I will do whatever makes them both feel safe. My words were simple because my heart was full. I can wash my hands, I can sit, I can hold her only if asked, I can be quiet. Danny turned to me. Mom, he said, and now his eyes were wet. I'm sorry. He looked like the boy who asked me once if bad dreams could leak out the window if we opened it. I'm sorry for the hurt. We'll help, I said. I kept it simple because the moment felt like glass. We're family. The words were steady. I let them sit in the air like a chair for someone to rest on. Dr. Patel gave that small stare again, not a hard stare, a caring pause. She looked at Tessa with a face that said, You are safe enough to tell the truth here. It filled the room with a softer kind of light. It changed the air. Tessa nodded into that look. I thought you told us no touching, she said, a little lost smile trying to form and then failing. I thought it was an order. Dr. Patel turned back to the chart and ran her finger under the lines again so we could all see the words, even if we couldn't read the screen. Words can be loud when we are scared, she said. The plan is clean hands, simple precautions, and normal closeness with the people you trust. I will write it again in today's summary. I will add the words, grandmother may hold baby with clean hands while seated. Sometimes it helps to see the permission written down. Tessa watched her write and cried a little more. Danny laughed quietly, the sound a mix of relief and ache. I let a slow breath leave my body, like letting air out of a balloon so it does not pop. Let's make an action plan for the next 2 weeks, Dr. Patel said. Small steps. She held up her fingers and counted gently. Hand washing at the door. No one visits if they have even a sniffle. Short visits start with 20 or 30 minutes. No passing the baby around. Grandma holds baby while sitting with clean hands when mom is ready for a few minutes at a time. Tessa listened and wiped her face. She nodded at each line like a student learning a new way to do an old thing. No crowded places yet, Dr. Patel added. Fresh air is good. A walk around the block is fine if that feels okay. Windows open at home when the weather allows. And rest. You both need rest. She paused again to give space for the words to land. Then she said, For the anxiety, here are options. Talk therapy, support group, gentle breathing exercises, a short walk in the morning sun each day if you can manage it. If the thoughts get too loud to function, we can discuss medication. There is no shame. Many mothers need it for a while. Your health matters. Tessa looked like she was listening with her whole body. Will it go away? She asked in a voice small as a child. It will get better, Dr. Patel said. With help and time, it will get better. You are not alone. She looked at Danny. You are part of the help. Keep the nights as gentle as you can. When the fear spikes, offer a pause. Sometimes a glass of water and a slow breath can change a moment. Sometimes she will need to cry. Let her. Danny nodded. Tell me what to do, he said. I can do lists. Dr. Patel smiled. You will do fine, she said. Make a simple routine. Keep the diapers stocked, the dishes washed, the laundry moving. Take a shift with the baby so she can nap. Watch her hands. If they are shaking, take the baby for a few minutes and tell her she can breathe. I stood still by the door and held my breath like a child in church. I watched Tessa's face move from tight to softer. I watched Danny look at her like she was both his partner and the person he wanted to protect. I watched the baby yawn and curl her fist. Life kept being ordinary in the middle of everything. Dr. Patel turned to me. Would you like to practice a moment? She asked. We can do it here so it feels safe. She looked at Tessa with a question in her eyes. Tessa hesitated, then nodded slowly. My hands felt suddenly too big. I washed them at the sink the way I had learned. I rubbed the backs, the thumbs, the wrists. I counted to 20 and dried them with a paper towel. My fingers trembled and I let them. "Please sit here," Dr. Patel said, pulling a chair close to the exam table. "Keep your back supported, hands open." I sat. The chair was warm where someone else had sat earlier. The paper on the table made a small crackle. Tessa stepped closer. She looked at Dr. Patel and then Danny and then me. She took one breath and let it out. "Okay," she whispered. She lowered the baby into my arms. The baby was warm and heavy in the way only very small bodies can be. She made a sound like a sigh. My eyes filled with water. I did not move much. I did not kiss her. I did not press my face to her hair. I held her with my hands under her, steady as a ledge. I whispered hello inside my own mouth. I watched her face. I let a tear run down and did not wipe it. Tessa watched me, and her shoulders did not jump. She did not look away. She watched my hands and my stillness, and I could see a small change happen in her eyes. Danny put a hand on her back and rubbed a slow circle. "Good," Dr. Patel said. "This is good. A few minutes, then back to Mom. In small pieces, your heart will learn that this is safe." She looked at Tessa. "You are doing it." I handed the baby back after a little while on the doctor's count. My arms felt both full and empty. I breathed in and out. Tessa took the baby and kissed the top of her head, a soft touch. She looked at me and tried to smile. "Thank you," she said. It was a whisper, but it had weight. "We will write this plan," Dr. Patel said. "We will put it in the summary. You can read it when the fear shouts. You can say, 'The doctor said this is okay.' You can show it to anyone who visits so you do not have to explain every time." She started typing. "Hand washing, short visits, seated holding with clean hands, no kisses, no crowded places, watch baby's cues." Nurse Carla knocked and peeked in. "All good?" she asked with a smile. She looked at Tessa, not at the chart. She watched her face. Tessa nodded. "Better," she said. The word sounded new in her mouth. Carla stepped in and set a small bag on the counter. "There's a brochure for the support group," she said, "and a little card with our number for after-hours concerns. You can call us, even if it's just to ask if this is normal. We expect calls. You are not bothering us." "Thank you," Tessa said. She held the card like it was a thin piece of hope. Danny took the brochure. He tucked it into the diaper bag carefully, as if someone could make the words disappear if he wasn't gentle. Dr. Patel turned to me again. "Grandma, your role is important," she said. "You are a calm voice in the room. You can model what slow and steady looks like. You can remind with kindness, not pressure. Think of your presence as a chair that holds the weight so others can rest." "I can do that," I said. I meant it with my whole self. "I will be the chair." Dr. Patel smiled, and the lines at the corners of her eyes deepened in a kind way. "You already are," she said. She signed the notes and stood. "We'll see you in 2 weeks," she told Tessa and Danny. "If it feels too heavy before then, call. We will make the load lighter together." We gathered our things. Tessa looked at the printed summary the nurse handed her. She read the line out loud, the one Dr. Patel had added. "Caregivers may hold infant with clean hands. Grandmother may hold baby while seated," she said in a small voice. She read it again as if to make it more real. At the door, Tessa turned to Dr. Patel. "Thank you," she said. Her face looked different now. Less like a closed door, more like a window cracked open. Dr. Patel nodded. "You are not alone," she said one more time. "Let other hands help you carry this." We walked out into the hallway. The monitor beeped somewhere behind us, and its sound felt less like a warning and more like a metronome. The fish tank glowed as we passed it, and a little girl laughed at a sticker from the front desk. Ordinary life was happening in all directions. In the parking lot, the air was cool. The sky had a thin veil of clouds over it, like a curtain pulled halfway. We stood by the car for a minute with the baby snug in her seat. Tessa looked at me. Her mouth opened and closed as if the words had to find the door. "I'm sorry," she said. The words were shy. "For how sharp I've been, I am scared." Her eyes filled again, but the tears were softer now. "I know," I said. "You love her. You are doing your best." I kept the words simple. I did not reach to touch her shoulder. I waited to be invited. Sometimes love is waiting. Danny put his arm around Tessa and pulled her close. "We have a plan now," he said. "We can do a plan." He smiled at me. "Right, Mom." "Right," I said. "We can do a plan." The word plan felt like a small raft on a smooth lake. We could sit on it and rest. On the ride home, the car was quiet, but not the same kind of quiet as before. It was softer. The kind of quiet that follows a long cry and a clear answer. Tessa sat in the back and watched the baby's face. She did not hover in the same way. She held the strap and hummed a little tune under her breath. Danny sat next to me without bouncing his knee. At a stoplight, I looked at my hands on the wheel. The skin was still dry from all the washing. I rubbed my thumb across the red patch between my fingers. I thought about what Dr. Patel had read out loud, the way her voice had been even and kind. No special isolation required. I thought about the line she added for us. Grandmother may hold baby while seated. I thought about the way she had looked at Tessa, steady, not harsh. A stare that was not a scold, but an invitation. I felt a long, slow breath move through me. The sting that had been living at the edges of everything began to loosen. Fear had a name now. It was not me. It was not my hands. It was something we could face together with clean hands and open hearts. At their apartment, we moved together like a small team. We took off our shoes and lined them in a neat row. I washed my hands and dried them with a paper towel. Tessa read the summary again and set it by the sink, propped up against the backsplash where it would be easy to see. "Do you want to try now?" Danny asked her gently. "You can say no, we can wait." He looked at me with soft eyes. I nodded. I would wait if that was what she needed. Tessa took a breath, then another. She looked at the chair by the window, the one I always sit in. "Let's try," she said, voice quiet but clear. "Just for a few minutes while I watch." I sat down with my back against the chair, feet flat on the floor, hands open and ready. I felt like a student who had studied all night. I could hear Tom's hum in my chest, the old tune that had held me so many evenings. I kept my body still as a promise. Tessa placed the baby in my arms. The baby was warm again, and I felt the weight settle into the curve of my elbow. I kept my eyes on her, then looked up at Tessa and held her gaze. "She is beautiful," I said. "You are doing so well." We stayed like that a few minutes. No one rushed. No one made jokes to fill the space. The room had a new kind of quiet, the kind that comes when something knots and then loosens. When the timer on the oven beeped for no reason, just the clock marking the hour, we all startled and then laughed. The sound felt like opening a window after a storm. Tessa smiled and reached for the baby. "That's enough for today," she said. "We did it." "Yes," I said, "we did it." My arms felt light and heavy again. I stood and washed my hands. I did not need the water, but it felt like a way to mark the moment. We had crossed a little bridge. Before I left, we looked again at the printed plan. We talked about how to make visits short at first. We chose 2 days the next week for me to come by for 20 minutes. We agreed on a simple rule to ask each time, "Is now a good time?" We promised to tell the truth. At the door, Tessa touched my sleeve. It was the smallest touch, like a sparrow landing on a branch. "Thank you," she said again. It meant something new now. I nodded. "We will take it slow," I said. "I will follow your lead." I walked out into the hallway and felt the weight of the day settle in my bones. It was a good weight, like a blanket made of soft cotton, not wool. I could carry it. I could take the long, slow steps it asked for. In the car, I sat for a minute before turning the key. I thought about the fish tank and the soft beep and the way Dr. Patel had read the notes out loud. I thought about her steady stare that made the truth feel safe enough to show itself. I pressed my hands against the steering wheel and whispered, "Thank you." I did not know if I was speaking to God, or to Tom, or to the doctor, or to all of them together. It did not matter. On the drive home, the trees looked the same. The maple still shed its leaves in small handfuls. The porch lights still flicked on one by one as the evening came. But inside me, something had shifted. Fear had been named in a small room with a giraffe on the wall. Love had been given a path, a simple one, made of soap and clean towels and a chair pulled near. And that path felt like the beginning of healing. The next day, I brought a small pot of stew and a loaf of bread still warm under a towel. I knocked softly and waited until I heard Danny's footsteps. He opened the door with a tired smile. I took off my shoes and set them neatly by the mat. The printed plan from the pediatrician was propped up on the counter. It felt like a lighthouse for us. I washed my hands at the sink and counted out loud, slow, and steady. Tessa watched and nodded. The rocker by the window waited like an old friend. I sat down and set my feet flat on the floor. I kept my hands open and still, resting on my lap. The room was quiet in the gentle way of new afternoons. Tessa looked at me, then at the baby. She took a breath that made her shoulders rise and fall. "You can hold her," she whispered. The words were soft, but they were a bridge. I nodded and did not move fast. I was careful with each motion. Tessa placed the baby in my arms, and I supported her with both hands, my arms like a cradle. I did not kiss her. I did not bring her too close. I simply held. Her tiny hand came out of the blanket like a little star. I touched her fingers with one clean finger. She wrapped her whole hand around it and squeezed. I let out a breath I felt I had been holding for weeks. Tears came, quiet and kind. They did not ask for attention. They simply rolled down and warmed my cheeks. Tessa watched me, and I could see her face soften by a small degree. Danny stood behind her and placed his chin on her shoulder. We did not make this a long visit. We followed the plan. I held her for a few minutes, then Tessa took her back. I washed my hands again, just because it felt good to mark the moment. The stew went into the fridge in little containers. "Thank you," Tessa said at the door. The words were a little steadier now. "For going slow," I nodded. "We can keep going slow," I said. "Slow can still be strong." The first week after the appointment had a new shape. I came twice for short visits. I sat in the rocker and held her for a few minutes each time. When she slept, I swept the kitchen floor and folded a stack of tiny laundry. Sometimes Tessa sat with me and did not say much. Being quiet together can be a kind of talk. She would watch the baby's breath, then look over at me to be sure I was still there. I was. One afternoon, I came a little early and stood in the hallway so I would not startle them. I heard the baby fussing inside. I heard Danny's low voice. I heard Tessa say, "Reset." The sound made me smile. When I went in, they told me about their new word. "We say reset when it gets loud inside us," Danny said. "We put the baby down where she is safe. We take 3 breaths. We drink a sip of water." Tessa nodded. "It helps," she said. We tried it together once. The baby made a face and began to cry hard and sudden as babies do. I felt my body want to jump up and fix it. Instead, Tessa whispered, "Reset." We put the baby safely in the bassinet, all hands gentle. We took 3 slow breaths. We picked her up again with calmer hands. On a Thursday evening, my phone rang late. The house was dark. The porch light was on. I saw the name on the screen and answered with a soft voice. "Hello, honey," I said. Tessa's voice shook. "She won't stop crying," she said. "She's been crying for 2 hours. I'm scared." I could hear the baby's wail through the phone. It reached right into my chest. "I'm coming," I said. I put on my shoes and a clean sweater. I grabbed a burp cloth and a small bottle of the lotion they used, even though I did not plan to use it. I drove with my hands steady at 10 and 2. The night was clear and cool. When I arrived, the apartment was bright. Lights were on in every room. Danny's face looked drawn. Tessa held the baby close and walked fast in a circle like a tide coming in and out. The baby's cry was high and hard, like a string pulled too tight. "It might be colic," I said gently. "It's okay, we'll try some things." I washed my hands and dried them slowly. I spoke to the baby with my eyes first, then my voice. "Hello, little one," I whispered. "We're right here." Tessa looked at me like she was holding her breath. Would you, she started, then could not finish. I nodded. She placed the baby against my chest and I tucked her head under my chin. I started to hum the tune Tom used to hum, the one that lives in my bones. The tune was simple. It did not go anywhere special. It just circled like a soft ring around us. I swayed a little, not much. I kept one hand on the baby's back with a steady pressure. I let my breath slow on purpose, and the hum followed it. The crying did not stop at once. It softened in small steps like a wave receding. The baby hiccuped between sobs. She breathed fast, then slower, then slower. She tucked her tiny body into the space over my heart and let her head relax. Tessa watched, her face raw. She did not blink. Danny stood behind her and kept his hand on her shoulder. His other hand pressed a clean tissue into her palm. The room got quieter by degrees. After a while, the baby sighed and slipped into that shallow sleep babies do when they have cried hard. I kept humming until her mouth went slack and her fingers uncurled. I did not move quickly. I let the quiet land. "Thank you," Tessa said. Her voice was small and honest. I didn't know what to do. I shook my head gently. "You did fine," I said. "Colic is loud. It can scare the whole house. You stayed with her. That is what matters." We sat together in the living room with the lights turned down. I handed the baby back, and Tessa tucked her clothes. Danny brought me a glass of water. I drank it and felt it move through me, cool and steady. The clock on the wall ticked like a soft metronome. "Will you stay a few minutes?" Tessa asked. "Just until I feel my feet again." "Of course," I said. I sat in the rocker and hummed a little more, like a thread tying the moment to calm. When I left, the house was quiet. The porch light looked softer as I walked to my car. A few days later, Nurse Carla called to check on them, just like Dr. Patel said she would. Tessa told her about the colic night and the hum. She said the word better and sounded surprised to hear it. When she hung up, she texted me a little heart. It felt like a new kind of hello. Tessa started her therapy sessions the next week. I came to sit with the baby during that hour. It gave me a simple job and gave Tessa a clear path to step on. The first day, she wore a blue sweater and carried a small notebook. She looked scared and brave at the same time. When she came home, she set her bag down and sat on the floor. She did not say much at first. Then, in bits and pieces, she shared. "We talked about the house I grew up in," she said. "How things were unpredictable. How I learned to survive by keeping things perfect." She looked at the clean counter as if it might answer her. I listened with my whole body. I did not rush to fill the silence. I made tea and set it near her hand without pushing it too close. She told me a little more each week. Some sessions left her quiet, others left her lighter. One afternoon, she said, "I used to line up my pencils and cry if someone touched them. It felt like my insides would spill out if one was crooked." She looked at me like she was checking for judgment. I shook my head gently. "I know that feeling," I said. "Not the pencils, but the spilling out, I know it." Danny adjusted to the new plan too. He started taking the first part of the night so Tessa could sleep for a few hours without worrying about missing a feed. He kept a quiet list on the fridge with simple tasks: diapers, bottles, dishes. They kept a sticky note with the word reset on the cupboard near the sink. When Tessa's hands shook, Danny would say, "Reset," in a voice that did not command, only invited. They would pause together. They would breathe. And then they would go on. One evening when I came by, I saw a whiteboard on the wall. The hours of the day were laid out with small words. Nap, walk, feed, rest, therapy. It was not a prison. It was a map. Tessa smiled a little when she caught me looking. "It helps me," she said, "to see the day." I brought the knit blanket back one soft morning. I had washed it again in their gentle soap and dried it flat. I folded it into a square and tied it with a ribbon that matched the yarn. I held it like an offering. Tessa untied the ribbon and lifted the blanket to her face. She closed her eyes and breathed in. She rubbed the corner between her fingers. The yarn did not shed. It held together, soft and true. "Let's use it today," she said. Her voice had a little light in it. We spread the blanket on the floor where the sunlight fell in a bright rectangle. We put a few safe toys nearby. We laid the baby down on her tummy and cheered her small efforts to lift her head. She gurgled and kicked and then drooled a long line right onto the yarn. For a second, I held my breath out of old habit. Then we both laughed. "That's what it's for," I said. "Drool is a kind of blessing." Tessa smiled, and the smile reached her eyes. "I like that," she said. We wiped the drool with a cloth and kept going. The baby found her reflection in a little mirror and made a surprised O with her mouth. The room felt like a gentle place. The first family event came on a Saturday with a sky that struggled to decide about the sun. Danny's cousin had a small barbecue in their backyard. Just a few relatives, a safe place to practice. Tessa was nervous and honest about it. She sent a message to the group chat with the guidelines: hand washing, no kissing, short visits. If anyone felt sick, please stay home. The responses were kind. That helped. I brought a bowl of potato salad and arrived early to help set up. I wiped the picnic table and laid out paper plates. I positioned the stroller in the shade, away from the smoke from the grill. I kept the hand sanitizer in my pocket like a small tool. Relatives came with soft voices and big eyes. The baby was still so new. They reached out to touch without thinking, as people do. I stepped in with a smile and a gentle hand. "Let's give her some space," I said. "Maybe later." I said it with warmth, like I was protecting all of us from something too quick. I pointed to the sink and the soap. "Hand washing is right inside there. Thank you." No one got upset. They slowed down. They washed their hands and came back with patience. They knelt by the stroller and peeked in. They said, "She is beautiful." They said, "Tessa, you're doing great." Tessa watched me do this and her face changed. It was not a big change, just a softening, like butter set near a window. She moved a little closer to me as the afternoon went on. Our shoulders touched once, the slightest brush, and neither of us moved away. Danny stood by the grill and looked like a man who was both proud and cautious. He squeezed my hand when I passed him a plate. "Thank you," he said, "for running interference." I shook my head. "I'm just speaking your language," I said. At the end of the barbecue, when most people had left, Tessa whispered to me, "Would you like to hold her for a minute?" We sat on a clean porch step. I washed my hands with a bottle of water we kept in the bag, the way campers do. I held her close and hummed. The sun warmed the top of my head. A breeze moved the edge of the baby's hat. Tessa watched and did not hover. It felt like a small miracle in ordinary clothes. Over the next weeks, therapy gave Tessa more words. She told me about a teacher who yelled in 4th grade and how she learned to keep everything neat to stay invisible. She told me how much she wanted to be the kind of mother who could let the grass stain the knees of her child's pants. I told her about the day after Tom died, when a bird hit the kitchen window and I had to sit on the floor for nearly an hour. "It was just a bird," I said, "but the sound made every room in me feel unsafe." She looked at me with wide eyes. "I thought I was broken then," I said, "but I was grieving, and grief makes ordinary things feel like cliffs." She nodded and wiped a tear away. "I think fear is my version of that," she said. "It feels like cliffs everywhere." I reached my clean hand across the table and let it rest near hers, not touching unless she wanted. "We can build fences where we need them," I said, "and we can open gates where we can." We had more quiet conversations. One afternoon, when the baby slept, Tessa said, "I'm sorry for the times I hurt you. I was living in fear." Her voice did not tremble this time. It stood on its own feet. "I know," I said. "We're okay." I meant it. The words sat between us like a warm loaf of bread, enough for both of us to eat. We laughed more often, too. The baby found her laugh one day, a bright little sound that came from deep in her belly. She laughed at a spoon. She laughed at the ceiling fan. Tessa and I looked at each other and laughed, too. It washed the room. Danny and I found our old jokes again in new clothes. "How's the thermostat?" he would ask, and I would say, "It knows who's in charge." He would point to the baby then and say, "She does." And we would all smile because that was true. We walked around the block on a warm morning with the stroller. The air smelled like cut grass. Tessa held a bottle of water. Danny carried a small bag with wipes and an extra onesie. I walked beside them and matched my steps to theirs. Neighbors waved from their porches. We stopped for a minute under a tree to check the shade. "How does this feel?" I asked Tessa. She looked at the baby, then at the sky. "Scary," she said, "and good." We did not need more words than that. At home, I hung a small copy of the plan on my refrigerator door. It made me feel like part of the team. Wash hands, short visits, seated holding, no kisses. Watch her cues. I did each item like a ritual. Sometimes Tessa would call and ask the simplest things. "Is it normal for her to hiccup this long?" she would say. "Is a yellow poop okay?" I would answer the ones I knew and suggest calling Nurse Carla for the ones I did not. It is okay to ask, I would remind her. Asking is a kind of courage. The follow-up with Dr. Patel came on a bright Tuesday. The exam room felt friendlier now, even with the same giraffe on the wall. Nurse Carla greeted us like we were old friends. The baby weighed more and measured longer. We all clapped softly, like we were at a small concert. Dr. Patel came in with that same steady grace. She listened to the baby's heart. She watched her eyes track a finger. She smiled. "She is thriving," she said. The word warmed the room. Tessa spoke before she could overthink. "Things are better," she said. "Still hard sometimes, but better." Dr. Patel nodded. "You are doing it," she said. "Your plan is working, your work is working, I am proud of you." She asked about therapy. Tessa told her she was going once a week. "Good," Dr. Patel said. "Keep going. The muscles in your mind are learning new ways to hold you up." She asked about sleep. Danny said, "We're taking shifts." He looked tired but less lost. Dr. Patel glanced at me with a smile. "How is Grandma?" she asked. I laughed softly. "Learning the rules," I said. "Happy to follow them." She nodded. "Your calm helps them all," she said. "Do not underestimate it." We adjusted the plan in small ways that day. A little longer visits if they felt okay. A short drive to the park at a quiet hour. One trusted family member at a time. "If fear spikes," Dr. Patel said, "use your word, reset, then return." On the way out, Tessa stopped at the desk and signed up for the support group. She looked back at me and smiled. "Tuesdays," she said. "I think I can do Tuesdays." I gave her a thumbs up like a school kid. Sometimes we need simple encouragement. There were still moments when the fear flared. Once a package arrived at their door and a neighbor knocked too loudly. Tessa's shoulders went up like a cat startled. She whispered, "Reset," and we did it together, 3 breaths, a sip of water. Then we opened the package like it was not a threat. Another time, the baby spat up with more force than usual. It scared all of us. We cleaned it up and checked her breathing the way Dr. Patel had shown us. Then I told a short story about Danny spitting up down my blouse in the grocery store and how a kind stranger handed me napkins. We laughed just enough to loosen the knot. As weeks turned to a couple of months, the knit blanket became part of the baby's world. It lay under her during tummy time. It kept her legs warm during an afternoon nap. It collected drool and milk and records of ordinary days. I washed it gently and brought it back. It grew softer with each washing. There were days when I did nothing but sit quietly and let Tessa nap for a half hour. I would hum to the baby in the rocker and watch dust motes move through the light. Quiet is not nothing. It is a gift that sits in the room and holds its shape. On a Sunday afternoon, I told Tessa about a night after Tom's death when the smoke detector chirped once, the way they do when the battery is low. "I could not sleep after that," I said. "Every sound felt like an alarm. I walked through the house and touched each wall as if to remind it we were still here." She listened with her eyes soft. "Fear can do that," I said. "It makes the air feel thin, but the air is not thin, we just need to remember how to breathe." She nodded. "That helps," she said. "It helps to know I'm not the only one who has been scared of ordinary things." We sat in silence for a minute, the kind that rests rather than weighs. The baby snored, a tiny sound like a mouse dreaming. Trust grew slowly, like a plant that needs bright light but not direct sun. Tessa's hand sometimes found my arm when she passed me in the kitchen. She started to smile at small messes and let them be for a little while. She let me hold the baby for longer stretches, seated and steady. Danny seemed to stand taller in his own skin. He made silly faces that did not feel like jokes, but like love. He took the baby for walks with a good carrier and came back with cheeks red from the wind. He learned to change a diaper in the dark and laughed about how many wipes one tiny person can require. On a rainy day, Tessa called from the sofa and said, "Would you like to read to her while I fold laundry?" I took a book from the shelf and read in a low voice about a little rabbit and a big meadow. The baby stared at the pictures as if they were someone talking to her. Tessa folded small shirts and listened to my voice with her eyes closed. We checked in with Dr. Patel again, as planned. The baby had doubled her birth weight. Her legs were strong when she kicked. She smiled at the doctor. Dr. Patel laughed. "I see new teeth planning their arrival," she said. We groaned together in a happy way. "How are you?" Dr. Patel asked Tessa. "More good days than hard," Tessa said. She looked at me. "More sleep," she added with a small laugh. "And more letting go." Dr. Patel nodded. "You are doing it," she said again. "That sentence keeps being true." Before we left, Dr. Patel looked at the knit blanket folded over the stroller bar. "Pretty," she said, touching the edge. "A lot of love in those stitches." I felt my face warm. "A lot of evenings," I said, "and a few tears." The rhythm at home found an ease I had not expected so soon. Not perfect, just kinder. There was still a list on the whiteboard, but sometimes an hour passed without checking it. Sometimes the baby napped through when she was supposed to feed, and we let her, and the world did not end. I noticed the way Tessa gave herself credit in small ways. "I did that," she would say after a hard moment softened. "We did that," Danny would answer. They said we like two hands that belong to the same body. I kept my porch light on at night. It was habit and also promise. There were fewer late calls now, but when they came, I answered. When they did not come, I still sat sometimes at my kitchen table and sent a little prayer into the air. Keep them. Help them. Thank you. One evening, as I left after a short visit, Tessa walked me to the door. The baby slept in her arms with her mouth open a little. Tessa looked at me and spoke with a voice that had learned something true. "I used to think love meant control," she said. "Now I am learning love can be trust." I nodded. "We learn together," I said. "I am still learning too." I touched the doorframe as I stepped out, the way my hand sometimes remembers old habits. The hallway was quiet. My heart was quiet in a new way. In the weeks that followed, we lived inside ordinary days. The kind that do not look like much from the outside, but feel like a quilt made of many small squares. A feeding that went well. A walk without worry. A nap that lasted 30 minutes longer than yesterday. A laugh that came without permission. The knit blanket kept its place by the rocker. The hand sanitizer stayed by the door. Both felt like members of the family now, not barriers, just tools. We used them without thinking and moved on to the next thing. When the baby rolled from her tummy to her back for the first time, we clapped like the world had turned a little in our favor. When she found her toes and held them like trophies, we took it as a good sign. Tessa took a picture and after a pause, texted it to me. "For your wallet," she wrote. I waited until she said it, then I printed it and placed it next to the old one in my heart. We kept our appointments. We kept our word. We kept our kindness near at hand like a clean towel. When the hard moments came, we did not act surprised. We said, "Reset," and we did. I do not know exactly when I realized that the heavy feeling in the air had thinned. It wasn't a single morning. It was many small mornings adding up. It was the day Tessa asked me, without hesitation, "Can you hold her while I shower?" It was the way Danny laughed with his whole face again. It was the sound of a lullaby that once meant panic and now just meant bedtime. At our next check-in with Dr. Patel, the baby banged her foot against the exam table paper and looked very proud of the noise. Dr. Patel clapped her hands. "Look at you," she said. "You bring your own drum." We all laughed. "How's the anxiety?" Dr. Patel asked Tessa gently. "Different," Tessa said. "Still there sometimes, but it doesn't drive the car now. It just sits in the back and talks." Dr. Patel smiled. "That is progress," she said. "That is all any of us can ask for." As we left the clinic, I looked at the fish tank and remembered the first day. The beeping that had felt like a warning now sounded like a beat we could walk to. The chairs looked the same. The hallway was the same. We were not. In the car, Tessa reached across the seat and squeezed my hand. It was a brief touch, simple and full. "Thank you," she said, "for waiting, for staying, for holding the line with me and for me." I squeezed back. "Always," I said, "the porch light shines even when the door is closed." We drove home and made lunch. We sat at the kitchen table and ate sandwiches while the baby napped. The house was quiet. The air felt kind. The plan hung on the fridge, not as a rule book, but as a reminder that we had learned how to stand together and breathe. We celebrated her first birthday at home on a quiet afternoon. A simple cake on a small plate, one candle, a tiny crown made out of felt. The knit blanket lay on the back of the rocker, washed thin with love, the yellow faded like an old sunrise. We sang, she clapped. Her hands went into the frosting and came out white and sweet. She looked at us like she had invented joy. Danny laughed the way he used to laugh as a boy. Tessa leaned into him, tired and happy at once.